What's up? This is your boy Alex. This is going to be back-to-back YouTube videos. I did a video yesterday, 24 hours ago. And today is going to be a very interesting YouTube video. One you thought I would never get made. It's finally getting made after literally almost 14 years. Well, it's not 14 because this year has to be over to be officially 14. So we got to say currently 13. This is like 13 years in the making of making this into a video. And the reason why I say it is 13 years in the making is because it's a very special list of a very special brand of people. Now, originally I wanted to make it 20 names, but it's hard when you say who are the greatest legit martial arts stars of all time. Like it's very hard to say who's legit because there are people who do movies and television shows, and then there are people who do martial arts on an occasion. We're talking about the people who did martial arts before they became rich and famous in sports, music, television, and film. Before they broke into the professional circuit, they were always doing martial arts. So if you're a man or a woman and you just love martial arts, not just mixed martial arts, but you just love martial arts, this video's for you. It's 13 years in the making. So this video is for men and for women. So it doesn't matter if you've done martial arts, planning to do martial arts, or if you've never done martial arts in your entire life and you just like to watch the video's for you. I don't want no one to come in the comment section and say I'm sexist and biased. So it's for both sexes, man and women, young and old, black or white. You're free to watch the video. So if you've done martial arts, the video is for you. If you just want to watch the video just to watch the video, that's okay too. Anything's better than anything. So the title of this video is going to be called Sex Game, the Top 16 Greatest Martial Artists, Action Stars in Film and Television of All Times. We're talking about 16 of the best actual legit martial artists who just happen to do it in movies, television. That may include sports and, things of that nature. People that when you hear their names, or if you don't know their names but you've seen their movies, you will know them when I tell you their names. And you know how I do my videos, I start from the bottom and I work my way to the top, because some people say when you do the YouTube videos, they're more fun and they're more entertaining and more creative than if you were to just start at the top. So let's get into it, shall we? Coming in at number 16 is Phillip Rhee. Phillip Rhee came in the mid 1980s, early 1990s, and he's basically a Korean person. He started off doing, some, not too much modeling, but he was a martial arts choreographer first. A lot of people don't realize that he was a choreographer, and basically he would be brought in to help actors do martial arts. And every time they did these movies, a lot of these actors would break their arm, break their leg, and he was already doing martial arts. And then they said, why don't you just go get him to pop up in these movies? And there was a movie called The Best of the Best that I saw when I was a little kid. I was always fascinated by martial arts. I was always curious on how would you get into that profession and how would you make it work for you. And one of the first martial art movies that I saw was The Best of the Best with him in it. Like, if anyone could kind of come in and kind of be another Bruce Lee, it was him. He had the look, he had that charisma, he had that it factor, he had that electricity, that energy. And he was so good on screen that if they made a Mortal Kombat or a Street Fighter movie, which they eventually did make into movies, which now when I think about it, 13 years later, it's actually a tragedy. Like, he was robbed of those opportunities. Because if anyone could have embodied what Liu Kang was in the video game, it's actually him. If anyone should have played Ryu in Street Fighter, it should have been him, because he was good enough to be in both. But when because he had, a lot of people don't realize this, he did audition for Mortal Kombat, like twice. And both times they said no. He auditioned for Street Fighter, they said no. Then he thought about getting into the television show of Kung Fu, and he probably got in there for maybe an episode or two, and that was it. So he was trying to get into those franchises, and they just said no. But when he was in The Best of the Best, that became our Mortal Kombat. that became our Street Fighter. The guy, by the time he got to the Best of the Best 2, he got all cut up. He put on 20 pounds of muscle. He got ripped. And this was an attempt to try to convince producers that he should have been Liu Kang for Mortal Kombat. And they just didn't think he had enough of that it to convince them. Of course, he did Best of the Best 3 and the Best of the Best 4. And then his career started to fall apart because, he wasn't getting any roles in movies and television. He became a martial arts instructor, and he's been a martial arts instructor for like almost 2.5 decades now. And he was pretty good in martial arts. He was very talented. It's just unfortunate he was robbed of those opportunities. Because when they finally decided to make their mind up that he was going to become Liu Kang in Mortal Kombat, Robin Shou just blew everybody away in the auditions, and all of a sudden they called him back and said, sorry, you ain't got the role no more, we're giving it to Robert Shou. And I think that right there kind of hurt his movie career moving forward, because he couldn't get no more roles in movies and television shows, and when they wanted him to come back, they wanted him to be like the guy to teach all the actors how to do martial arts, which is good, but you make less money. And he took the money available and made a martial arts school and started teaching kids how to do martial arts, and he's been doing that ever since. So he's got into some movies, and we know him from the Best of the Best series, but his career was cut short because at that time it was the 90s, and to them, if you weren't an action star, they were not gonna take you in the movies, which was a big blow. But he'll always be remembered for his presence on screen. Coming in at number 15 is a professional wrestler by the name of Rob Van Dam. Now, before he became a professional wrestler, an amateur bodybuilder, he was already doing martial arts at 12, 13 years old. He was getting picked on, he was getting punked, bullied, and he met two of the biggest influences in his entire life. Now, he was this close to meeting Bruce Lee, but it never happened because at that time his parents didn't really have no money and they couldn't afford to go to those movie premieres when Bruce Lee came to the United States to do his movies. But he did get to meet the second biggest major influence in his entire life. He got to meet Jean-Claude Van Damme. Isn't it funny? The guy looks like Jean-Claude Van Damme. The guy meets Jean-Claude Van Damme when he's a kid. Then when he gets to wrestling, he's the little kid that would get in the ring and kiss the $1 Million Man's feet. And he was the one that got a $100 bill. And then 10 years later, he's doing a promotion called ECW, which is Extreme Championship Wrestling. And he becomes real good at it. All of a sudden, he becomes a 4-time tag team champion. He becomes a television champion twice. He becomes the ECW World Champion 2 times. He has great wrestling matches with Sabu, Tommy Dreamer, and then he gets injured. And then when they were doing Monday Night Raw versus ECW, he would come in the ring and he would wrestle Team WWE. They was doing this thing in 1995, early 1996, where they were going to bring them in, and it wasn't until 1997-98 that we got to have ECW versus WWE. And that was a competitive match because it showed what he was going to be doing. Like, at that time, they did not allow you to come in to do martial arts. Like, if you try to do martial arts in WWE back then, they wouldn't take you. Like, the only wrestler that was kind of trying to do that was the 1-2-3 Kid, who would later become Six Pac. And Rob Van Dam became the second wrestler to do martial arts in professional wrestling. Like, he was doing backflips, cartwheels, somersaults, jumping off the ring turnbuckle. And then when he got into the WWE, he just took that act, and they wanted him to be this ninja coming in, and he made it his own because he was coming in here doing things that were so, like, you had to be like, in my opinion, you had to be like 5'8", 175. Like the stuff that Rey Mysterio be doing, this guy was 230 pounds and was 5'8" or 5'9", and he was doing stuff like that, and he was real big doing this stuff. Like, this guy was coming in the ring, jump off the turnbuckle. It was like Dragon Ball Z came to life or some shit. Like, I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to make fun of Dragon Ball Z because I love Dragon Ball Z, but I'm talking about if you watch the fights in Dragon Ball Z, the way the characters fight in the air, he was doing that in wrestling. He would have incredible matchups with Chris Jericho, stuffed of legends, wrestling matches with Jeff Hardy, Matt Hardy. He would go wrestle Eddie Guerrero, which was the greatest. He would wrestle Eddie Guerrero, and it was like a contest who could do the best frog leg splash. And in that trilogy, the first match they had, he beat Eddie Guerrero. The rematch, Eddie Guerrero beat him back, and then in the third and final match, he beat Eddie again. And it was like moonsault after moonsault, leg fresh splash after leg fresh splash, over and over and over again. Then he would go on to win more championships. Of course, he won the tag titles 3 times with Kane. Then he won the Intercontinental Championship like 8 times in his career. Then he wrestled Booker T. He wrestled a lot of these guys, Kurt Angle, Brock Lesnar. And to be his height, his weight size doing that was unheard of. Like, the only wrestler back in the late 70s, early 80s that you could compare Rod Van Dam to is Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Because he was doing all of that high-flying stuff when nobody accepted it. And he was being greatly compared to Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Actually met the guy twice in his wrestling career when he was getting started. And Rob Van Dam also wrestled in WCW too. Sting saw him and saw he was going to be a great guy later. And if anyone told the truth about him getting really good, was The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Because he was doing things in those wrestling matches. Like, Stone Cold had a hard time in those matches. Tag matches, single matches. He couldn't keep up with Rob Van Dam. Like, he still won the match, but it took the whole match to beat him. The Rock, same thing. The Rock was having a hard time with this guy. And when people made the face comparison between him and Jean-Claude Van Damme, you could see why. And then when he was in ECW in 95, he met Jean-Claude Van Damme for the second time. This time, it was in a wrestling ring. So, to be the guy that meets Jean-Claude Van Damme, to look like Jean-Claude Van Damme, and then to be the second wrestler to do martial arts and wrestling. That's why he's on here, because he was doing martial arts before he became a professional wrestler. So you got to show Rob Van Dam some respect. And I actually got to meet Rob Van Dam like 13 years ago. It was back in 2007, Venice Beach, California. The guy likes to surf, okay? He likes surfing. It's another sport outside of wrestling. And he was on injuries list because in 2006, he got injured by Randy Orton, the legend killer, and he was on injuries list. And at that time, he wasn't sure if he was going to come back to the WWE or not. That's when he made his jump to TNA Wrestling and wrestled for TNA for 4.5 years. Then it was Japan. Then he found himself back in the WWE, and then he found himself back in TNA, and then he just stopped wrestling altogether. So yeah, he's a very interesting, nice person to meet. He's not like most wrestling personalities. Nah, kid, I want $300 to take a picture and sign your autograph. He'll actually speak to you for about 5 to 10 minutes, shake your hand, ask you what your favorite wrestling match is in WWE, WCW, ECW, TNA. All you do is just gotta talk to the guy. He likes Venice Beach. He loves California. You say you name the wrestlers, he'll tell you who he wrestle with, who he tag team with, best friends with Rey Mysterio Jr., so like I said, he's a very good person to know. Coming in at number 14 is Robin Shou, the guy who became Luke Kane. Robin Shou did a lot of martial art movies for years. For like almost 7 years, nobody knew who Robin Shou was. Like, he was doing martial art movies everywhere, and nobody knew who he was. And when he hit the United States, he were doing these movies just like Phillip Rhee. He was basically a martial arts choreographer. He was helping actors in movies and television shows. And when Hulk Hogan wanted to be taken serious, guess what? He kind of came in there and helped out Hulk Hogan. You know, he would help out Arnold Schwarzenegger. He would help out a lot of these guys like Roddy Piper, a lot of these guys who were retiring from wrestling and were trying to do action-packed movies. At that time, they did a movie called London and I think Paris. I can't remember the television show that Hulk Hogan had, but it was where he was a bounty hunter and he wore all black, black shirt, black pants. He had the gloves. He was swole. He was buff, and he had his own commando team. And he was the stunt double at that time. That's how he got to Mortal Kombat because he got discovered by Hulk Hogan. See, a lot of people don't understand that. Hulk Hogan and Arnold Schwarzenegger were like on set of his television show, and at that time they looked at Robin Shaw and said, "This guy needs to be kicking somebody's ass in these movies." And think about it: if it weren't for Arnold Schwarzenegger and Hulk Hogan, he wouldn't have a career. I mean, he had a career, but nobody knew he was doing all the stuff you see in Mortal Kombat. He had been doing it, and what it took was to help Hulk Hogan with that television, because that television show ran for like 3 or 4 seasons, and Hulk Hogan was trying to become an action star after retiring from wrestling. So he did a character called Liu Kang from Mortal Kombat. He got to be in the Mortal Kombat movies. He ended up doing a Street Fighter movie later, and he ended up being in 2 Death Race movies. So he's a legit action star, and he's a legit martial artist because once his star rised, he kept getting in movies, kept getting in television shows. So he's been in the game for like 3 decades, and he's someone to learn from. He's someone that you can be inspired to be. Because when he got the chance to make someone else into a star, he did. He's the one who kind of went back to his hometown, and then he went to another country, and then he was watching these Bangkok fights, and he saw a guy by the name of Tony Jaa, and he helped him out get into the movies. So these guys looked out for Robin Shou, and Robin Shou did what a real martial artist is supposed to do. You see somebody trying to get their career started, you help them get their career started. Coming in at number 13 is Tony Jaa. Tony Jaa is like 50% Robin Shou and 50% Jet Li. Like, if anyone is going to pass the torch between Robin Shou, Jet Li, and Jackie Chan, if one of them 3 came, one of them 3 would be the ones to pass the torch to Tony Jaa. Tony Jaa is like 5'6", 5'7", 175 pounds, and I saw a martial arts movie in 2005 called The Protector. Now, if you ain't never seen the movie called The Protector, you might want to go watch it. Before he got into the Fast 7 movie, before he got in Triple X3, he was in a movie called The Protector. You know that fine-ass Asian actress that was in Tokyo Drift 3? And then she would appear later as Chi-Chi in Dragon Ball Evolution? Yeah. He basically was in that movie, and basically he became a legit international star. The idea that you could fight bodybuilders and whoop their ass to go save an elephant was why the movie was so good. And it spun off to make a Protector Part 2. Then there was another movie about Muay Thai. This is what made me wanted to do Muay Thai. Because at this time I had already done karate. I had done 2 different versions of karate. I had done American karate, and then I did another one called, at that time they had another variation of karate, There were Russian karate, there was Shotogun karate, and then they had an advanced level. So I took karate and an advanced level. Then I had done kung fu, I had done boxing, and then I learned some other fighting styles, but at that time I wanted to learn Muay Thai. And when I saw how he done Muay Thai, it reminded me of the movie Kickboxer. And then he does a movie called Muay Thai 2, Obaki Warrior 1, 2, and 3. So he made like 4 movies of him doing Muay Thai. And to me, he's one of the guys that you expect to have the torch be passed to. Because he's a legit action star. And his betrayal in Fast 7 is legendary. that scene where he's going at it back and forth with Paul Walker on screen, that's actually him actually doing martial arts. And he kind of showed Paul Walker a thing or two on set. Because the next time we see Paul Walker, we do a movie, Paul Walker in there getting ready to break somebody's arm, so you know Tony Jaa showed cast members on the Fast 7 movie set some martial arts. So again, he's on the list because what do real martial arts do? They don't just do martial arts, they also teach and help people out in difficult times. Coming in at number 12 is Steven Seagal. Whether you like Steven Seagal, whether you hate Steven Seagal, he is on this list because he is a legit martial artist. Now, does he sometimes over-exaggerate the stuff that he does? Yes. Without question, he does exaggerate some shit. But he is a martial artist. And you do have to show some respect. He is a legend. He is an icon. He's been in the game for 3 decades. He's kicked ass. He's taken names. He's been in movies, television shows, commercials. He has had his own martial arts school. He's been a police officer, a security guard. He's even done songs. He's been a songwriter. And he's a 8th degree black belt in martial arts. And one of my favorite Steven Seagal movies was in the 1990s called Hard to Kill. It's one of his best films to date. Like, out of all of the Steven Seagal movies, Out for Justice 2, Glitter Man, and the two Under Siege and Under Siege 2, Executive Order. That one had John Leguizamo, Kurt Russell, Halle Berry was in that movie, and he was in that movie. Where out of all those movies, I like Hard to Kill the absolute most. Why? Because it's Steven Seagal in his prime. You know, the idea that you could be working for the police, you find out that somebody's crooked and politician, they don't want you to expose them, and the fact that he goes into a coma for 7 years, spoiler alert if you ain't never seen the movie, he's like 14 or 15 years old, and he wakes out of that coma and he still remembers martial arts. That's incredible. That's like by far my favorite Steven Seagal movie. That, and in my second most favorite, Marked for Death. Those are my favorite two, hands down my favorite two Steven Seagal movies. Under Siege Part 1 would be the third one, and then of course he did a movie with Morris Chestnut that was in that movie, and then 20 years later he does another movie, and then he does a movie with DMX. Yeah, he did a movie with DMX. He did a movie with John Woo. So he's still irrelevant. And what I really got happy is when he made his comeback in Hollywood. When he did a movie called Machete, where he played the villain and he had the badass sunglasses, the samurai sword. I went, oh shit, we about to see some magic on camera. Danny Trejo versus Steven Seagal. And you see, when he became a villain for the first time in movie cinema history, it was like a shock to everyone. Because you're so used to Steven Seagal always being the hero, always coming out on top. And when he played a villain, that just added more to his character. Like, okay, finally he's going to play this badass villain. And it was like, in a way, he was saying goodbye to Hollywood. Like, the way he was giving the torch to Danny Trejo. All right, I'm giving you the torch now. You're going to be the one that's going to lead the next generation, so go lead it. And that's what it took to propel Danny Trejo to where he is today. Not to say that he was not already doing action-packed movies, because he was. But the problem that Danny Trejo has was nobody that was a big star was really trying to, like, give him the exposure that he was looking for. And Steven Seagal did it. So that's why you got to put him on there. Coming in at number 11 is tied as Gina Caranno and Rhonda Rousey. This video would never be complete if I didn't put no women on here, because if I had just had all mid, then women would be like, hey, there's some women that done some martial arts. There's some women that did some movies and kicked some ass. So I got to put some women on here. So she's American, and I actually watched all of Gina Caranno's fights. I watched all her MMA fights when people didn't even know who she was in 2003, 2004. You know, I got into a fist fight a long time ago in high school, got suspended for 3 days, And while my mom was at work, there weren't nothing on TV, and one day I turned to this one cable channel by accident. I was trying to find Speed, and I saw her punching the punching bag. I said, well, this is a fine-ass white girl hitting the punching bag. And she was talking about her first fight, her first MMA fight where she knocked somebody out. And she was getting ready for her third fight. And by the time it was 2005, 2007, she was in there doing martial arts. And she was doing a bunch of movies at that point. They were low budget and they hadn't took off. And then all of a sudden, she announced her retirement because she had won a championship belt. And then she was getting ready to have one of her biggest fights to date. She was going against Cyborg. And I think she either won the decision or it was a tie or whatever. I can't remember what happened. And then I noticed she vacated the belt. And then she retired in the prime of her career. And then she popped up in the movie called Haywire, which it was an okay movie. I mean, it was her acting debut. Then she appeared in another movie where because it was Haywire, and then there was another movie right after that that was very identical to it. And basically, then she got into a movie called Deadpool. Then she appeared in Fast 6, which I thought was her best movie performance because she was fighting Michelle Rodriguez. I was like, damn, that's like the best fight I've seen in the movie. And the only thing that would make her be higher on this list, if she stayed in there just long enough, it would have been nice to see her fight Ronda Rousey. Like, that would actually be a badass fight. Like, it's a tragedy that these two won championship belts, dominated for a short while, and then left and then did movies. Now, on the other hand, we have Ronda Rousey. Now, whether you like Ronda Rousey, whether you hate Ronda Rousey, she is a legit martial artist. She was doing martial arts for almost 10 years before she got into the movies and the television shows, and she was doing martial arts before she became an MMA fighter. You know, there was some abuse going on. We know the story. Some people say her boyfriend abused her. Some say she abused the boyfriend. There is some controversial. It's well documented. And whether the case is, she's on the list because she did fight. Now, she, in the very beginning, she was knocking people out. They had never had a female come in and just knock somebody the fuck out. Like, the way she was knocking people out, they would say she was a cross between Mike Tyson and his prime, knocking people out. And I remember somebody in 2010 or 2011 had made this controversial magazine, what would have happened if she fought Layla Ali in her prime? And I kind of went like, please don't do that. I mean, that's like another sport. That's a different world. Layla Ali's a different monstrosity. This is MMA. Keep the two sports separate. Like, please do. And I remember Ronda Rousey's comments got her in trouble because she said, oh, I'll take her on. And then she gets into professional wrestling and she still shows that she can still whoop somebody's ass. Like, she don't fake it. She do it for real. Like, she's like they were then comparing her to Brock Lesnar because she does this shit for real. And people get upset when that actually happened. And then when she got knocked out, because we all know she got knocked out, that was like the defining moment that made you went, okay, how's she gonna come back? She never asked for a rematch. Which is a shame. She should have asked for a rematch. And she would lose another fight right after that. So she would lose 2 fights. She lost that fight, and then she lost the very next fight after that. And then she didn't come back for a while. And then she eased her way into movies, which nobody took personal, because that's what they expect you to do. And then she found her way into wrestling. And the fact that she won the Women's Raw Championship belt, and then the fact now there's her arguing on Twitter with Nia Jackson. And unfortunately, I can't get my dream matchup because Nia Jax here is getting in trouble. But I'm not going to say it because we don't want WWE to come and shut the video down because I'm talking about how great Ronda Rousey is. And before anyone starts talking about why you ain't made one for women, I'm going to make another one for women. But it's going to be half wrestling, half martial arts, half boxing. I ain't forgot about the females, so don't be tripping. I have some on here because the title is martial arts. Okay? Just relax. We'll have another one for the women. Just calm down. So that's why they're tied. Coming in at number 10 is Marcus. I can't pronounce his last name. Dacascos. Now, he's a very international martial arts star. He did a documentary 10 years ago about the culture of samurais. I watched it. He is a second or third generation Japanese, and he went to Japan to learn how the samurais created their swords. And he was in that documentary, and he also appeared, I think, either in season 1 or in season 2 of Human Target, where they were trying to explain the different styles of martial arts that come from different countries. So he was in those 2 documentaries. Then he did some movies with Jet Li, Cradle to the Grave, and then he became the villain in John Wick 3. It was like, oh snap, they got him. I'm like, I like this guy, he's badass. He did a TV show in the mid-1990s called Martial Law where he played a bad guy, and basically he was real good. He's another guy who also auditioned to get into Mortal Kombat. He eventually got in the Mortal Kombat web series as Kung Lao, the descendant of Liu Kang. So it was nice to see him finally get picked for Mortal Kombat years later to have on his resume. So he's had a track record, and it's unfortunate that the first 10 years he was ignored. Because at that time you had Jackie Chan, you had Jet Li, you had Jean-Claude Van Damme, you had Michael J. White, you had Wesley Snipes. All of those guys' careers were taking off, and his career was like at the wayside. Nobody was looking at him. And he had to get on all these television shows and play all these villains just so he could get seen. And when he did these movies later in his career, that's when people saw that he actually had great acting range. So that's why he's on this list. Coming in at number 8 is Wesley Snipes. No martial arts list is ever going to be completed without Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes was doing martial arts when he was in high school and college, okay? That's how serious Wesley was in the martial arts, okay? He didn't just start doing martial arts because of the Blade films. Because a lot of people that watch those Blade movies, they want to say that's when he became a legit martial artist. Bullshit. He was doing the shit way before he got to the Blade films. When he graduated from college and when he was in the movie New Jack City, he wanted to do some martial arts, but he knew it wasn't the right time for that type of movie. And then he got his chance because he did a movie called Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone. That's when he showed that he could fuck somebody up with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Ninja-Jitsu, karate, kung fu. That's when you saw that this motherfucker can whoop your ass. You're like, oh shit, Wesley Snipes? Oh damn. Nigga was just hitting so fast. You're like, god damn. And the way he would just fuck somebody up. And then